Hey, it's One Plucky Pixel here, and welcome back to another creative design tutorial. In today's video, we will cover how to create simple and more complex masks within Adobe Illustrator. We first have example number 1. We do have an illustration of a sand dune down here, and also a hexagon as our desired mask. In this case, we want the sand dune to take the shape of the hexagon. I'm just using the regular selection tool over here. I'm going to click and drag the sand dune in place. And as you can see, as I select both objects, essentially what I want to do is crop out all of this area over here, but still be able to then edit my sand dune within the original object. In this case, I do need my clipping mask on top of the original artwork. Think of the clipping mask as a cookie cutter. This is the dough, and the clipping mask is the cookie cutter itself. In this case, I select the hexagon. I then go to Object, Arrange, and Bring to Front, just like this. And from here, we can now create our clipping mask. You can either use the regular selection tool to click and drag like this, or you can also select one object, hold the Shift key on your keyboard, and select the other object as well. From here, we can right-click and make clipping mask. And just like that, the sand dune is now inside of the hexagon. Now, if we double-click on the hexagon, we now enter what is known as isolation mode. You can see that there is a slight haze around the document, and we do see the bar appear here as well. Currently, we can move the sand dune. The hexagon itself stays the same. It doesn't change in position, scale, or rotation. You can freely edit the contents inside. I can make the dune larger, smaller. I can rotate it. I can change its color. I can even move individual anchor points and curves. Now, if we want to exit isolation mode, there are different layers to this. We are within the clipping mask itself. We can then return to the regular layer, and then the arrow to exit isolation mode entirely. Now, in some cases, you may want to retain the shape behind the object that has now been applied within the clipping mask. In this case, let me do an undo really quick, just doing Command Z to go back in time. And now we're back to our objects before the clipping mask. In this case, let's say I want the hexagon to be a midnight blue. We want a dark sky behind the dune itself. I'm just going to use a default swatch like this. From here, ensure that the shape is selected. We then go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste in place. So we now have a duplicate of the hexagon in dark blue in the same exact position. I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard, select the sand dune, right-click, and select Make Clipping Mask. And as you can see, we do have the cropped version of the dune itself, but with the original background of the hexagon still in place. So this is one way you can approach a clipping mask. The next example is a lot more complicated. You can see we have a collection of organic shapes. They kind of remind me of jelly beans. In this case, what we have to do is actually create a compound path. As this is, if I go ahead and move the dune over and place it behind our object, so once more using Object, Arrange, and now Send to Back, this will not work as is to create a clipping mask. Instead, we're going to use the regular selection tool, just like this. I can click and drag to select all objects, or I can select one object and once more just hold the Shift key to select the other two objects. Once I've done so, I need to right-click and select Make Compound Path. Essentially what that does, the compound path unifies the objects. However, it doesn't create a solid option from the objects themselves. They are still individual objects, but they function as one. Consider it one step above a group. From here, we can then select the dune. I'm going to move it roughly in place. I'm now going to select all objects, like this. Ensuring that this object is on top, we do need the compound path of the jelly beans on top. We're going to right-click, and then make clipping mask. And just like that, we do have the sand dune inside of our jelly beans, for lack of a better term. Likewise, we can still double-click, and move around the object within it. Now, we have gone back in time, and just like the previous example, we can also retain the background color as well with the original shapes. To do so, like we did before, we're going to change the color. I'm using midnight blue. I will then select Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste in place. From there, I can hold Shift, select the dune, right-click, and make clipping mask. And just like that, we have the dune cropped, and we still retain the original shapes with the background color of my choice. Moving to our next example, things get just a little bit more complicated. We do now have a very dynamic art piece with many different shapes and paths within it. At this point, these are all singular objects. In order to crop this within the hexagon, we're now going to select all of these objects at once. So once again, using the regular selection tool, I'm going to click and drag to select everything. I will then right-click and select Group. Please note that the compound path will not work here. You must group this object. From here, we can then click and drag in place. I'm going to use Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. From there, I can select both objects, right-click, and make clipping mask just like this. Once more, if I do have the hexagon selected, I can double-click, and from there we can actually move the artwork within it. Now you may see that there are some stars that are a little bit close to the edge. We can actually go and enter isolation mode once more, but we're going to go deeper into those different levels. I can double-click once more, and now I can actually remove individual stars. I can then regress to other layers. I can go back to the clipping group, back to the original layer, and finally exiting isolation mode, just like that. The final example is the most complex. We do have a collection of shapes. Our jelly beans return once more over here, and we still have the same art piece with multiple objects. Once more, we're using the regular selection tool over here. I will then click and drag to select all of these objects. I right-click and select Group. Once more with these objects for our clipping mask, I can select all of them once more, right-click, and make compound path. From there, I can then select the artwork, situate it in place, select Object, Arrange, and now Send to Back. Finally, we now select both the group containing the visual art piece and the compound path containing the mask. Right-click and make clipping mask. And of course, you can still double-click and enter isolation mode just like before. And there you have it. Those are 4 methods of creating different masks within Adobe Illustrator. Overall, I would say that the clipping mask feature is fairly straightforward. However, it can get quite complicated when managing groups, compound paths, and also the isolation mode feature. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. As always, thanks for watching.